Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go through just a couple different things on Time to Track today really quick because I kind of want you guys to get a view of what the students are seeing as well. So I'm going to show you the student view, and then I'll show you the faculty view as well. But that way, especially for you guys that are teaching practicum, that way you can kind of help your students if they have questions about what they need to do when they're setting up a placement. Okay. So this is going to be a student view that we're looking at. When students sign in, they should be seeing their calendar and then this button that says add a new activity. So it can be a little bit confusing because what students need to do and what they're instructed to do is to set up their placement. And you don't see anywhere to do that when you first look at Time to Track. So if students are curious about what that is, you can tell them that they need to go in here and click on add a new activity first. Once they're in this screen, this is where they'll always go when they're adding any hours that they've logged. But this is also where they need to go to set up their original placement. And so what a placement is for a student on Time to Track, that's going to be their actual site that they are doing their field work in. And so some students, might have more than one site. So if they have more than one site, then they're going to have more than one placement. So they'll need to set up a placement for each site. And they will do this every semester. So every semester, they'll set up a new placement, even if they're at the same site. So I'll show you what it looks like. So they'll click on add a placement. They will just keep this level here the same. And they're going to go in, and hopefully everything is there for them already if they've submitted all their paperwork. They'll click on whatever their course is. So for those practicum students, they're going to click on 514. And for our internship 3 students, they're going to be clicking on 655. I'll go ahead and do a practicum one. And then they're going to look for their training site. Now, again, if every student has gotten approval already and their contract has been processed, which almost every single student has a processed contract at this point, there are probably, 2 or 3 out there that still are sending me stuff today, but everybody should have their site in here if they have gotten their paperwork in and it's been processed. So if a student is having trouble finding their site and they know that they've gotten approval already, then they can contact me and I'm happy to take a look at that with them. But this is the site list. So I'm going to go in here. I have a CCU internal one that I use for demos. So I'm going to click on that. Then they need to make sure they have the correct term in here. So right now it's defaulting to fall 2018, which is correct. And then they're going to find their faculty. Same thing here. Everybody should already be in here. I should have added everybody's name, but they'll go in here and search for their faculty member. So Cheryl, I see you here. I'm going to go ahead and click on myself because I have a demo account here as a faculty member. And then same thing for supervisor. What's going to happen with supervisors is they won't get a list of all the supervisors. They're only going to see the supervisors attached to their site. So right now when I pull down the supervisor list, I'm only seeing my name because I'm the only supervisor attached to the CCU internal training site. So all of this information is really, really important. They have to have all of this in there to be able to log hours correctly and send them off for approval correctly, which we're going to go over that in a minute. But this is really important. So they'll save that placement. And then every time they add an activity, then they're going to make sure that they're selecting the correct placement. So like I said before, if a student has 2 different placements, then they'll have a drop-down box here and they can click which placement they're going to log hours for. So you'll see I have a couple placements in here from the different demos I've done. But I want to make sure for this particular demo, I'm going to add activities to CSL 514 at CCU Internal Fall 2018 placement. So that's important that they do that correctly. Again, like make sure they have the correct supervisor, and they just want to make sure they're checking this information really closely when they're adding their activities. Something I have seen happen is a student will forget to add their faculty on there, or they'll forget to add the term. And so they can continue to log all of their activities, but then their faculty member can't see their activities, or they're not able to get them approved correctly, or they're not receiving their forms from me, because if their placement's not in there correct, then that's just going to throw everything off for them. So it's just important that they make sure they're double checking all these things every time they add an activity. Okay, so the student's going to go in here, they're going to add an activity, so they're going to just select whatever information they need. So I'm just going to select school as my treatment setting. They'll log their activity type, so that you'll see here that this list is already created, so they don't need to create what their activity type is. They're just going to select from the list that we have here. So they're broken up by indirect hours and direct hours and supervision hours. So I'll log a couple here. We'll add an indirect hour really quick. So let's just say this first week as a practicum student, they did some training. This is indirect, so they don't need to add a client. And they don't have to add a client at all. This is kind of a feature of Time to Track that we aren't necessarily utilizing right now, but this is something that they can utilize if they want to keep track of their clients in here. They'll add however long they did training, so if we did it for an hour. And tags is the same thing. We don't utilize that right now, but they can if they want to use that to organize their activities. They can tag this however they'd like. Okay, so I'm not gonna, this isn't any type of an assessment. This isn't something I'm scheduling as a reoccurring activity. This is just a one-time thing that I'm gonna log. So I'm gonna say add and enter another, because I'm gonna add a direct hour as well. Okay, so you'll see up here it says your activity's been saved. So I'm gonna go ahead and log another one. Same thing, same placement, so I don't need to worry about this. My activity type I'm going to do this time is an individual counseling hour. And I do have some clients in here, so I'll just go ahead and click on one. This is one I've already added, or I could add a new client if I need to. And I've coded them here. And I saw this client for an hour, and I'm going to add that. Okay. So now you'll see that I have some activities that I have logged, and they're just sitting here as confirmed status. That just means that I've logged them. Now as a student, you have to log your hours by adding an activity, and then you have to submit them for approval. So your supervisor as a student cannot see anything you do until you submit them for approval. So you're gonna, as a student, go to the approvals tab up here. And I have lots of different hours logged in here from previous demos, but you, let's see. So you'll see, I'm just gonna go through these really quick so you can kind of see what they look like. This is an hour that I've logged before and it's been approved. It shows on the left-hand side that it's been approved. Here's one, this third one down, that shows it's been rejected. So that means my supervisor rejected that hour for whatever reason. So you'll be able to the student can kind of keep track of what's going on based on the status over here. This one here, I'm gonna see if I can do this a little bit. I'm gonna submit hours for approval here. So I'm just gonna show you really quick. I have 8 hours that are sitting in here from other demos, and I'm just gonna click on this really quick. Submit hours for approval. So I have all these hours that I have logged, but I've never sent on for approval. So what the student does is they click on that submit hours for approval, and then they can choose which ones they actually want to submit. So they could submit all of them at one time, or they could submit just a couple of them. So I'm going to go to the term that we're in. These are the hours I just logged. So remember, I logged clinical training and individual counseling. And I want to click both of those, and I'm going to submit these for approval. And it says way to go up here. So that means it went through. So I just got an email in my inbox that said I have hours to approve because I am also the supervisor for this demo account. So that's really nice. So once a student submits the hours for approval, the supervisor is going to get an email that says they have hours that need to be approved. They don't have to rely on those emails. They can be getting into Time to Track daily or weekly and checking out their approvals, but they will get notifications. So that's really nice. So as a student, those are the biggest things when logging their hours. They have to go to activities, add a new activity, and then they have to go to approvals and submit hours for approval. The other thing that students have access to in here is forms. So this forms tab is not going to show up quite yet for the student because I haven't sent them any forms. But once I send forms to them, which are going to be, you know, their CCSR forms and their evaluation forms at the end of the semester, their form tab will appear. So I'm going to click on that because I probably have some demo ones in here. I do. So these are from past demos that I've done. Once the supervisor submits the CCSR form, then it appears in the student's account. So it's kind of similar to the students logging their activities and then having to submit them to the supervisor. The supervisor won't see them, remember, until the student submits them. Same thing with the forms. The student can't see the form until the supervisor submits them. So these forms that are sitting in here right now, I have a Spring 2018 Professional Practice Site Evaluation form and a Professional Practice Site Evaluation form. So these are forms that the student will have to fill out at the end of the semester, and they're sent out by me. And remember, I said their placement and how they set it up is really important, because if they don't set it up correctly, then they might not get the form from me, because I'm only going to send them to all of our, practicum students or all of our internship 3 students. And so if they don't have that information entered correctly, they won't get the form. But this is where their forms will be housed, and they can just click on it here, and they'll fill it out digitally in Time to Track. So something that Deb and I were going over a little bit ago is the forms, because before, the way Time to Track has always worked is faculty members could not actually access the forms or see the forms. And so we've always had students print the forms out once they've filled them out and then upload them to Blackboard. And we might do that again this semester just to make things simple, since that's the instructions in the shell. But I want to be able to show you guys, I think you guys are actually having access to forms now, which might be a new thing Time to Track has done, which is really great because you could actually get in there and take a look at them. So we'll look at that in the faculty view here in just a second. But students will do it all on Time to Track, so that's really nice. Those are the 3 main things students are doing in Time to Track. Before I move on to another view, do you guys have questions about what the students are doing or seeing? Yeah, Cheryl.
I just have one.
Yeah.
When you talked about adding a new activity, the recording information is right over a box. Is that box where you click to do your initial activity, that little box at the top left of the top tab?
Let's see. Right in here, is that what you're talking about?
No, up higher, you see where it says recording, where the actual video is recording, and there's that red dot. There's a little square under it. At least that's how I see it on my screen. It's the top tab that has activities and the date above the browser.
Okay.
That little tiny square, is that the initial place where you clicked?
No. No, once they come in, once they log in, I think what they'll see is, I'm going to go back because I think what they end up just seeing when they log in is this page here. And if you remember, so there was none of these weren't listed yet because I didn't have any of these. So it just said add a new activity here in the middle. This little button was just here in the middle, and that's where they start it.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah. So they would click on the add a new activity, and then they set their placement up here.
And they set their placement right there. Okay. Got it. I don't know how I thought that was that top button. Okay. Thank you.
That's okay. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so that's a student view. And again, you're not going to be in the student view, but that way if they have questions or if you want to look at their screen with them, you can try to help them with that. I'll go ahead and I'm going to jump into the supervisor view really quick so that I can approve those hours that I sent over. So a supervisor, you don't need to know a whole lot about what they're doing, but just so you kind of have an idea, they don't have a lot of functions. Their main function is going to be to approve their students' hours and then to be able to access the forms. So they'll just have this simple view. They'll see approvals here at the top. And again, it looks very similar to a student's view. They'll just see all of the activities listed, and then they'll be able to see what's going on with them by looking at the status. So for example, the first one that we see is the one that I just sent over for approval. So it's this practicum placement, and it's 2 hours right here. And so I had just sent those over as a student to approve. So the supervisor will just click on it here, and they'll be able to look at the breakdown of what those are. And then they can either approve it or they can reject it. So if they need to put a note in here, they can. Usually if someone's rejecting it, they'll put a note in here as to why they're rejecting that. But I'm going to go ahead and just approve it. And then they just click submit. So that's really simple. Now you as a faculty member will be able to see those hours have been approved. Okay. So I just approved those, so you see the status of those changed. These ones that are sitting here right below, you'll see this was like an hour right here that a student logged, and it was approved by the faculty member. So I have approved it as a faculty member, and below it, it says verified. What that means is that the faculty member at CCU has verified those hours. So you as a faculty member, that's your role. You're going to go in there and verify all of the hours. So now the supervisor can see that you've done that. They can also see the hours that they've rejected. And here's some submitted hours that have not been approved. Do you guys have any questions about the status here and how this reads? Yes.
Could you just show that?
Oh, you're muted, Cheryl.
Sorry, could you just show that verification again?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so I'll click on it just so you can kind of see. This is just, this is an hour of individual counseling that a student submitted, and it was approved by the faculty or by the supervisor, and then it was verified by the faculty. So it's kind of confusing to look at because they're all under my name right now, but this would say verified by Cheryl Mark.
Okay, so I would just click that tab, that's it.
So I'm going to show you how to do that as a faculty member here in a second. This is what the supervisor sees. So this would be the supervisor on site. So they're just able to kind of see if you're verifying hours or not. So this is still the supervisor's view. They approve hours here, and then they can access their forms here. You shouldn't be getting a lot of questions from supervisors about time to track. Usually if they have questions, they'll direct those to me. So I'm going to hop out of this view and go to the faculty view. This is what you guys should be seeing when you're in time to track. Does this look familiar? You should just be seeing a students tab, an approvals tab, and a forms tab, which, like I was saying before, the forms tab is new. That wasn't there before. So this is kind of something that we'll be exploring more in the next semester. So you should be able to you know, look at your students as they add you. They should start showing up down here. And you'll be able to like click on each student individually. And this is really nice. You can click on them and it'll pull up their profile essentially. And you'll be able to look at their hours here. So this is a really nice view, like towards the end of the semester when you're wanting to make sure they're on track. If you click on activity summary. So it's going to break down the hours in different graphs and individually here. But I'm going to show you really quick the easiest way to look at them. So if you're here on activity summary, you could go ahead and look at just the placement you want to look at. So, you know, if I just wanted to pull up the current term that I'm in, this is the placement I just set up with you guys here on this demo. And I only want to look at approved hours because I really just only want to see as a faculty member how many hours my student has. And they may have logged, you know, X amount of hours, but if they're not approved, then we are not counting those hours towards their required hours. So I just want to see the approved ones at this point. I'm going to filter those out. And I'll see this student has 1 direct hour, 1 indirect hour, with a total of 2 hours that have been approved. So this is like a good just little snapshot. I'll pull up another placement so we can see if there's more on there. Let's just look at this one really quick. So this one only has direct hours logged. Let's see. Okay, so this placement is from an old demo that I just pulled up. I'm looking at the approved hours only. This student has 4 direct hours and 1 supervision hour, and a total of 5 hours. So this is just a good way, like I said, if you're wanting to see kind of how your students are progressing, you know, midway through the semester, you want to make sure that they have, you know, about 7 hours of supervision. You could just pull each one up individually and just filter out the only approved hours here, and you can get that snapshot just to kind of see where they're at and make sure that they're on track. I think this is really helpful in practicum since you're wanting to make sure your students are going to get those 100 hours before the end of the semester. But it's also been really helpful for our faculty to be able to make sure the students are getting their supervision hours they need. Do you have any questions about this view here, activity summary? Okay. So that was under the students tab. I just clicked on an individual student. You also have an approvals tab. And this is where, Cheryl, you were asking about how you verify the hours. This is where you're going to do that. So you'll click on that approvals tab. And you will see, again, very similar to what the students and the supervisors see, you're just going to see a list of those activities that have been logged and have been sent over. So again, you can't see anything until a student submits them. Once they submit them, you'll see those hours. So we'll see this very first one here. This is the 2 hours that I logged as a student here on this demo account, and it's been approved by the supervisor. So I can click on it. I can look at it again. I can see that same breakdown. I can see when it was submitted by the student, and I can see when it was approved by the supervisor. And then I can verify it or I can unapprove it. So mostly, I would say faculty are probably just verifying these hours. The only time I can really see a faculty member probably unapproving something is, let's say a student logged their class time and the supervisor approved it, but you as a faculty know they actually did not attend class. And so then you could unapprove that. Otherwise, you're probably, if a supervisor is approving them, then you're probably just going to be going in there and verifying them. So you'll just verify and submit. And now you'll see that it says approved and verified. So I think this, just learning this language is part of it, because the approval and verified language can be a little tricky. So if you're going through and you're seeing that it's been approved, but there's not a verified status next to it, then you know that there's something you need to do still as a faculty member. So like, right, for example, this hour here that was logged, it was approved by a supervisor, but I have not verified that as a faculty member yet. So that's something I still need to do, because a student needs to have all hours approved and verified by the end of the semester. So something that I've really just recommended is going in as a site supervisor. I tell the supervisors to try to go in weekly, and then same for the faculty. If you could just be in time to track weekly, if you kind of knew that that's something you were going to do every Friday, or whatever day works for you, and going in there and verifying hours, that's going to be so much easier for you than trying to get in there at the very end of the semester and verifying a bunch of hours, and trying to remember if those are correct or not. Cheryl, I see your question in the student view. What would the tag be used for? Oh, was that from earlier? Sorry, I just saw that. So again, I can answer that just really quick. So I do know some students are tagging things. I've seen some students tagging, like if they're doing a certain assessment with their indirect hours, or they kind of want to just, break apart those indirect hours, or they want to tag their clients a certain way. That's just a way for them to categorize them and organize them. But again, it's not anything that we're doing. So it's just something that a student could use. CCU is not keeping track of that. So the other thing I'll just say about this is, it's just important that you're getting in here weekly and looking at it. Because every semester, it doesn't fail, I have at least, a couple students, a couple site supervisors that are asking questions about time to track that let me know that they haven't been logging and approving throughout the semester. And then it gets really hard at the end of the semester to try to backtrack. And so just even last week, I was working with a student who didn't log their hours correctly, so they had not been approved, and so the faculty member couldn't verify them throughout the semester, so we were having to backtrack and go in and kind of fix those activities so that the faculty member could verify everything. But if the site supervisor and the faculty member are getting in there weekly, then you really shouldn't have that happening. You should be able to kind of stay on top of it throughout the whole semester. Okay, so that's how you would approve hours. The last thing I'll show you really quick, and this is new, is this Forms tab here. So for forms, faculty never were able to see forms. So this is new. I actually just saw this for the first time this morning. And I was going through it with one of our faculty members, and it's not super intuitive, but I will just show you really quick. If you want to search for one of your students, that's the best way to do that. So I would search for a student, and then let's just say the second one here is the one we'll use because they have a form attached, and I know that because of this icon here. So you would click on this form here on the right-hand side, and you'd be able to see all the forms that are associated with this student account. So they have a Spring 2018 CCSR evaluation, a Spring 2018 student evaluation of site supervisor, and a Spring 2018 professional practice site evaluation form. So then as a faculty member, you could get in here and actually see the form, which is really nice because like I said before, faculty members couldn't see the forms. So I can see one this one's in progress, this one has been submitted, and this one has been sent. So this lets me know that this form was sent and the student has not done anything with it yet. This one has been filled out and submitted, and this one has been started but not finished. So if I want to see the submitted one here, I can click on View, and then I can look at the student's evaluation. Like I said, this is new. So we'll probably still have students print off their forms from Time to Track and submit them to Blackboard for grading. But I do think this is a really cool feature because as a faculty member, now you don't have to rely on me or anybody else to check on forms. You should be able to get in here yourself now, it looks like, and see what's going on with their forms. I would think this would be really helpful when it comes to these CCSRs because we really want you as a faculty member to be checking those CCSRs. So you'd be able to do that in Time to Track just by looking up your student. So this is a new feature. As we learn more about it, we'll probably be able to talk more about what we'll want you to use this feature for. What is the yellow triangle? So this yellow triangle is telling me there's some kind of error here. So there's 4 hours that are unapproved but have been submitted. So that just means the student has submitted hours that the supervisor has not approved yet. So that's just letting us know that. Do you guys have questions about the forms here? Like I said, this is new as far as I know for faculty. And I know, Deb, you've taught these classes before. So do you kind of have questions about what this feature could be used for? Yeah, I think it is really nice. I think it's going to be really, really helpful. You know, you'll be able to go in there and actually see, like, has the form even been sent? Because I think we've had in the past 2 site supervisors saying, I don't have the CCSR, it hasn't been sent to me. So you could get in there and check and see if it has actually been sent. But I think really being able to see the actual evaluation in here is going to be really nice. And again, if a form has not been sent, then you're not going to see anything in there at all. So we won't send any forms out until a couple weeks before the mid-semester time. I'll send out mid-semester CCSRs, probably around like session 4 or 5. So that's the first time we'll even have forms show up in Time to Track. And if a student doesn't have a placement set up, then I can't send them a form. And a student has to log activity before I can send them a form as well. So those are just little things that Time to Track, little nuances that we've learned. So as long as the student is setting up their placement correctly, then I should be able to send them forms. I want to show you guys one more thing. We might run out of time here in a minute. I'm going to go into my view really quick and pull up a student. I'll use this student really quick just so you can get it. I want you to see what like an active student's profile looks like. So this student here, you can see like the last time she logged into Time to Track was August 2nd. But if I wanted to look at her hours, I would click on that activity summary. This student is going to be in internship 3 in the fall, so she's got quite a few hours logged and she has lots of different placements that she's set up because she's done practicum, internship 1 and internship 2, and then she'll actually have internship 3 on here as well. But if I want to take a look at what her approved hours were for the summer semester, I could filter those out, and I just want you to see what it looks like. So you can see she had 70.5 direct hours that she logged just this summer, 122.5 indirect hours, and 14 hours of supervision, and a total of 207 hours this summer. So this is just really nice, a good view. You can just see everything broken down. So here you can see this. Cheryl, she tagged some of hers as milieu hours. So that's actually a really good example because they can only log so many milieu hours. So that's, and count them as direct. So that's a good way for her to do that, is to keep track of them that way. They could also, they can log so many hours that they study for the CPE exam or the NCE exam. So they could tag those as well to help them keep track of what they're logging. So those would be good ways to do it.
Jessica, how many hours is that per study for those exams? Is it 30?
I think it caps out at 36, actually.
36, okay.
Yeah, and we allow 25 hours to be counted towards direct hours of milieu counseling. So that is a good way to keep track of that as a student. So I just wanted you to see like kind of an active student and what that looks like when you look at this. Another thing, when I click on activity details here, this is something I look at a lot because, okay, this is good. So for example, these first 2 hours or activities that they've logged here are not logged correctly. And I know that because there's no term associated and there's no faculty member over here. Actually, there's no faculty member all the way down. Do you guys see that? There should be a faculty member listed right here where my browser is. And there should be a term right here. So you see how it says summer here? So if I'm going to scroll down and click on an old one and see if she did it correctly somewhere else. So she hasn't been logging hours with her faculty member, which is why none of these say that they've been verified. So that's where the placement is so important. Because if they don't do that, then the faculty member can't do their job and actually see and verify those hours.
This isn't my student, is it?
No.
You think the faculty member would have realized that they weren't approving hours for a student all this time?
Yeah, yes.
That's not good.
That's why it's so important. That's why I keep stressing, if you could just set a day every week that you get into time to track even.
That's what I do. Yeah.
Yes. Then you can just stay on top of it and you're not at the end of the semester scrambling, which is what I've had to do with some of our students and faculty. So it's really, really helpful because the student, it's honestly an honest mistake. The student probably, she doesn't even know that she's doing this incorrectly because everything else looks correct, but the faculty member is not on there. So that's just a little, an error in when she was setting up her placement is my guess is what happened. But if anything is fishy, if at all you're in week 2 or 3 and you're like, I'm not seeing anything from the student, it's really best to figure it out with the student or myself as soon as possible, because then we can avoid this from happening all semester long. Okay. Do you guys have any questions? That's the gist. I know I went over a lot because I showed you guys multiple different views.
That was probably a God thing that you brought that student up just for an example and found that, because she's going to be, yeah.
Yep, I'm going to have to go in there and figure that out. Yeah, yep. And there's no way in my role to be able to see that for every student unless I click on each one individually. So that's just another reason why it's just so important that our supervisors and our faculty members are in there every week.
Yeah, on top of it and checking. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. I'm good. I think that forms part is going to be really good.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm excited to see that. Yeah. Cheryl, I see you have a question about this. This download, this would just download your students into like an Excel spreadsheet. So if I had all my students, I'd be able to pull them all into an Excel spreadsheet. So that's nice if you wanted to do that with your class roster. You could do that. And you could see some of this information. It's only as much as they've entered.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay.
Cheryl, another good thing to do, seeing as how you're starting out, is check your class roster against the students that are on your roster in time to track, just to make sure that they all got set up correctly. And These missing, because I had that happen once too.
Thank you, Deborah. That's a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to be doing a a site supervisor orientation. It won't be until session 2 since we have next week off, and I'll actually be out of the office. But during that session 2 week, I think it's September 10th, I'm doing an orientation with all the site supervisors. So we'll be going over time to track at that point as well. So that should be really helpful, especially for those new supervisors who have never used the system.
Looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think it is. I think, it's pretty easy to use. It's just getting everything set up initially, I think, that, makes it go smooth. So I think if you could just work with your students, especially those practicum students who have never used this before, to make sure that they get everything set up correctly, then hopefully you shouldn't have any issues. But if you do, let me know. I'm happy to get in there and troubleshoot with you guys. The help desk at Time to Track is also really helpful. But there's been a lot of things that we've been able to figure out on our end if we can just get in there together and kind of poke around a bit. So just let me know if you have questions.
Very good.
Okay.
Thanks, Jessica. Appreciate
You're welcome. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.